Good afternoon and welcome into the Takeup. Today we have an impromptu live from my hotel room in Minnesota, right from the DAX show. All right, folks, hopefully you can hear me all right. You'll have to go ahead and let me know if I'm not coming through. I'm having to use a backup headset and working from the hotel room with a virtual green screen. But I wanted to jump in really quickly and give you guys a quick update from the DAX show. I know we're a little late, but we're here after the show floor starts to close down in the afternoons to talk about what's going on this Education Friday, what is going on with the education world out here as we're traveling for the trade shows, and how things are going on so far for the DAX show, for the Decorated Apparel Expo. Now, this is the second of 3 events for the DAX show this year. So if you haven't gotten out to see one of the DAX shows and you still have a chance, right? You might be in the Illinois area, you're in the Chicagoland area. DAXshow.com has all the details for the final DAX show event of the year, which is coming up very shortly in just about 2 weeks. Tinley Park, Illinois. You're going to see classes from me on April 13th and 14th. These are the last times I'm teaching these classes this year, and they often don't come back around for a while. But in Tinley Park, Illinois, you will see me doing both the long event, which I did yesterday here in Minnesota, which is build up your digitizing design elements and execution. And we'll be doing the shorter class the next day on that Friday morning that I just did this morning, which is Embroidery RX, a digitized review, where I talk about diagnosing designs and figuring out whether or not we're having problems with our file or in execution, and then how do we approach and fix those problems. So that's what I've been doing so far out here. So I am out, like I said, Decorated Apparel Expo, Minnesota. DAXshow.com is where you go get more details. And I've been out here so far. Came in early. We're doing that early. Like I said, the long workshop on the day before that is 3.5 hours. I am not a sadist. I do give everybody breaks for 10 minutes a couple times through that piece, though. Believe me, it is a lot of content in a little bit of time. We went all out on working on the building blocks of digitizing, understanding embroidery at a fundamental level, and then digitizing from that standpoint, how to make more of designs. And the biggest part of that build up your digitizing class that I think is very valuable for all of us who want to do something more than just represent exactly what's in front of us, reproduce the art that's given to us, is that we talked about surface qualities, textures, and how to make designs into something that is better as embroidery than it would be in print, the unique proposition for value that embroidery has, and that is texture and dimension. So that went all on Thursday. And then this morning, I went ahead and did this class. Like I said, Embroidery RX Digitized Review, and this one was really well attended today. Had lots of great folks out. I'm also doing this as kind of a partnership class with Katie Woodman of Trouble Me Not Embroidery. She has a very similar class called Embroidery RX, a machine operator's view, where she talks all about execution and what's happening on the machine. So really cool stuff going on today. We got to talk about the digitizer's view. So for me, it is how do we isolate a design problem, problems with a file, problems going on with exactly how things are laid out, stitch positioning, density problems, short stitch problems, sequencing problems, all of that, and how do we mitigate these things, whether we digitize ourselves or we are working with digitizers. So cool stuff overall. If you'd like to hear more about the trade show floor, I'll say that though these are smaller shows than some of you folks may have expected, let's say if you go out to the Impressions Expo shows, like Long Beach, where I've taught several units this year in January, or I'm going to be teaching actually in September coming up. We're working this out right now in Fort Worth, Texas. Those shows tend to be a little larger on the floor. However, and pardon me for not having my phone properly silenced again today. However, what you're going to notice is the people were very engaged. We had lots of new folks, I'll say this, people new to embroidery, really engaging, asking lots of questions, and making things happen on that show floor. And this morning, the booths are all out here. We're very well traveled. Lots of folks checking things out, people clogging the aisles, and people discussing the work we do. Of course, lots of people talking about other sorts of decoration. We had the folks over at Magic Touch doing like white toner transfer stuff. So heat press white toner transfer. We were seeing DTGs, direct to garment, DTF, direct to film transfers going on. certainly traditional screen print happening. Got to talk to Charlie Taubleib, the kind of just the elder statesman of screen printing today, about his new book that came out, which is really cool. Got to see him in the kind of educators and vendors lobby. That was really fun to go ahead and talk to him about that book and about some upcoming stuff from him. But we're seeing people just really excited about getting into decoration, learning how to get things done. And on the digitizing side, I had lots of folks from different kind of spectra, just whether or not they were coming in as newbies, if they were using maybe kind of entry level equipment, or they were coming into the commercial sphere. Every angle was covered. People in commercial shops, people who were just picking up, people who've been doing it for a while and wanted to get to a higher level with more control, all of the above. And lots of folks with interesting stuff going on, new and interesting ways of approaching this business and of approaching embroidery. So I love to see it. And honestly, it was fantastic to just get to be here among the people and to have people hang out after my classes, ask lots of questions, spend time with me, want to know more about what we do, heck, want to know about software, want to understand different automated features, understand how to manually punch, because I talked about blending. I mean, there is not a part of digitizing that I didn't touch on with somebody in the last 2 days. And that's always really energizing and exciting and fun to see. So great time talking to everybody out here. And frankly, I saw lots of people getting into little groups, discussing things amongst themselves, really getting into how it is to be a part of the business and to work on embroidery. So really great stuff. Like I said, different levels, different skill sets, and different goals. And that's kind of the cool thing too. This show, more than some that I've seen pretty recently, I saw people with business models that were different, people taking on jobs that were outside of the usual realm of commercial machine embroidery, but doing it as part of a business. So fantastic stuff, right? If you are going to be at any kind of trade show, what I would fully recommend, let's kind of talk about this for a second. Number one, why do I recommend that you attend a trade show if you can? Well, part of it certainly is the education. If you're going to a show like DAX, where they really have us be fairly independent, we come out and teach specifically about the topic at hand. We're usually not in kind of sanctioned sessions. And when they do have sanctioned sessions, it's very clearly known that someone is sponsored for those. You end up with education of a bit of a higher caliber. It's not sales pitchy, and that's something really interesting. But when you come out here, the thing that you might not think is that it's about the relationships you'll have with people, even in your region. There are folks who don't like the concept, the concept of talking to their competition in the immediate area. But even these regional shows, I find that there is more cooperation than competition. Most people want to talk about what's going on in their shops. And hey, even if you want to call it kind of the group therapy version of what happens at the trade show, maybe that's clear and that's fine. Sometimes we just talk shop and talk about the things we go through and the difficulties we've had, and even just kind of that, if you want to call it fellowship, fine. I know that word's loaded for some folks. Just that kind of group environment where we get to talk to each other about a shared culture of creating designs and creating embroidery for customers, for people, for those we serve. So that was pretty interesting, right? Always seeing that is great. And in fact, because everyone comes at this from a different angle, because one person may be doing historical embroidery, which I got to talk to somebody who did really awesome historical piece I got to see. So we're talking about kind of revivalist embroidery, machine embroidery that looks like medieval embroidery, something that certainly is near and dear to my heart. Somebody who's working on normal, you would say maybe normal commercial projects, but they're taking on things that are a little bit beyond what you might expect, garments that are difficult. These people are going to have different attitudes than someone who's taking on very, bread and butter standard business to business decoration, and very different attitudes from somebody who is working on fashion stuff. And I also had that too, people who had their own lines who were looking for more inspiration. When we are talking to those folks, they all come to decoration with a different skill set and with different problems they've solved. And when you mix those people in one room and let them talk about the thing they do and the things they love to do, you get more understanding than you would have from any single solitary interaction. So that kind of Socratic method of talking something over, and we all bring our own sometimes biases, mostly experiences. And with those melded together, we end up with a greater understanding than we would have had on our own. So, really fantastic time talking to folks, getting to see some folks on the show floor, honestly, getting to see my friends in the industry and having little adventures helping out with things going on in the booth. All of these are wonderful experiences for me. And I know if you attend trade shows, especially if you go to them, maybe a couple times every couple years at least, and see the people, see your vendors, and on top of it, go ahead and find out, make connections with your local reps. Find out what's new in the space, see what's new in the technology, see what's new as far as what's being offered to you for blanks and materials and techniques. It will revitalize your love for the business. It will introduce you to things you might not have searched out for yourself when they are all there in the open marketplace, and you will make connections with other people who do the work. That's why I kind of say I think the trade shows still have their place. I think the online world and all we do in gathering online also has its place. This has its place. You guys chatting with each other in the chat rooms has its place. When you guys are in the comments talking to each other, I love that too. So we all have our place in this grand kind of space of where we connect. But trade shows have a very unique place in my heart, especially when I started out. My first experiences in embroidery were really by myself, running the embroidery by myself, running the digitizing by myself, and having to figure out everything really untethered kind of on my own. Seeing people help each other and being able to be one of the helpers is one of the best things I've ever done. So let's say hi to the few folks who are here. I know I did not announce this early, but I'm very happy for you guys to be here to ask questions. And honestly, hey, while we're here, I'm going to be here for a little while yet, probably for no more than 20 minutes. But while I'm here, if you have questions about embroidery or digitizing you just want to ask right now and you want to have office hours with Eric, this is a good chance to have it. Since this is impromptu and I wasn't expecting to come on, I don't have an agenda. I just wanted to talk about what's going on at DAX, talk about the things I saw. If you guys don't have questions, I'll talk about some more things that were out on the show floor just to let you know the kind of things you might see. But let's say hi to some people who said hi live while we're here. Number one, Lisa Shaw. By the way, your ears are probably burning because I talked about some of the education stuff you do and the great things that you share with your Vimeo channel and the events that you put on. So Lisa Shaw, thank you for sharing your expertise with the world as well. Frank Dunn, who always does such a great job building communities online. Frank, good evening. Happy to see you in from the UK, my friend. Lena saying, education Saturday morning in Aussie land. Morning, Eric. Well, good morning, Lena. Love the folks out in Australia. I have lots of friends out there and always like to see you in. Curtis saying hello. Hi, Curtis. Happy to see you in. Denise from here in Minnesota. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, Denise. Happy to see you too. Kathy saying, thank you for sharing your knowledge of this. You know what? Thank you for giving me that lovely comment. I mean, those are very kind words. Honestly, I'm just happy to help you guys avoid the trial and error stuff that I've done throughout my career. And if I can have any effect on inspiring you to try something out for yourself and honestly giving yourself the space to work, play, make mistakes, and try something new so that you advance your own work in embroidery, if I have any part of that, even if it's just that I make you feel better about making the same mistakes we all go through, that's what I'm here to do. All right, we have Marcos here from Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Marcos. I'll be back down in the Southwest where I belong here shortly. Tomorrow night, fingers crossed if the blizzard doesn't hold me up or keep me in Minnesota tomorrow. I shall be back in New Mexico and back into weather that's a little bit more like you. Lisa says, I know you love chatting about embroidery. Office hours are great. Thank you, Lisa. Happy to be here and do that, honestly. Kathy says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Kathy. Happy to have you in. And Maureen says, hi, Eric. Love your info sessions too. Oh, thank you very much. It's very nice of you to say. So, like I said, if you guys have embroidery questions, digitizing questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll talk a little bit more about what's available at the show, and I'll go ahead and throw back up the link. DAXshow.com is where you find out more about the Decorated Apparel Expo. And right now, we are at the Minnesota event. But remember, coming up in Tinley Park, Illinois, just a couple weeks away, the DAX show will be doing its final event for the year. All right, so what else did I see at the show or on the show floor that's interesting? Certainly, if you guys have been around the other podcasts I do, including doing the production, fulfilling the producer role. Let's take a drink real quick. Sorry, folks. I have been talking nonstop for like 2 days. All right. Fulfilling the producer role, doing the production for the two other guys, then that my good friend Aaron Montgomery is out here with a booth for OSG for our success group. It was good to stop in and see him. So he's out helping people with their business plans and getting things together. Folks from Corel Trainer are out teaching Corel Draw, and that was awesome to see them. Of course, we've got manufacturers and their vendors are out on the floor. So I saw the ZSK. We had the 8 out there now. So the new ZSK, the faster model that we've been looking at, is out there. Heard a little bit of mixed reviews on it, but at the same time, people really love the ZSK machines for the quality. So love to see that. Saw some lovely Tajima single heads running today as well. They had some very impressive samples that were done. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to ask and see. I think I know who did the samples, but because I'm not sure exactly who did the digitizing on those really tiny tech samples, looked like they were running some 60 or 75 weight thread for uh, some small single line cursive text. Very impressive stuff that if I've gotten some pictures before tomorrow, I'll try and put those up in some of my social media accounts, because really impressive, interesting stuff, very likely done with manual stitching to get that tight and get that small. Very fun, detailed kind of drawing stuff done there, as well as the large multicolor pieces that everyone always runs during the shows, which you may not know, since I've actually donated some of the pieces I've run before, some of my larger jacket backs to be run in machine embroidery booths like that, is that they look for designs that can sit and run kind of all day without being attended to. That's why they're really light. Not number one, because it's easy not to have to attend to them and constantly put garments on and off. Number two, because the big multicolored giant jacket back style embroidery is eye-catching and brings you around to take a look at it. But they use these big designs that keep running for quite a long time. I've been in several booths with some of my designs, though I haven't done it for a while. But saw the Tajimas running today, saw some stuff from SWF as well, saw some Melco stuff running as well. But at this show, really, it's single head embroidery. It's a smaller show, regional show. A lot of people who are in small single head type shops, third bedroom shops that I was hearing from. Now, certainly other people with more production were certainly there and discussing, but tons of people who are moving kind of on that prosumer chain. Lots of people running like brother equipment, lots of people running, like I said, what I would consider multi-needle prosumer, like home brand models, but multi-needle equipment. There was a lot of that being discussed, but on the show floor, I did see lots of commercial single head equipment going on, as well as the other stuff that I talked about earlier, DTG printers, DTF printers, all manner of heat press, white toner transfer printers, and of course, screen print, traditional screen print, all in effect on the show floor today. But generally, unlike when you go to the really large Long Beach shows and we've got, giant automatic presses, multi-head machinery of various sorts in the booths, chenille machines, things that are not as standard appearing. Here, generally, you're going to see single head embroidery, though it is commercial single head embroidery by and large, and things like more cutters, more heat press, and especially stuff that is more geared toward the home business, small business entry level than you might see out at some of the larger shows where they're trying to put on these really large booths. But still fantastic stuff to see overall, right? Lisa says, any trends you're seeing? One of the biggest trends, and this is over the course of the last year and a half, and yes, I'm going outside of embroidery for this, but I'm just going to be clear that this has taken over every trade show and really every magazine, is direct-to-film printing. It really is DTG done on a film transfer substrate, and then the classic shaken on adhesive that we used to use for screen print transfers since time immemorial. I'm sure it's changed a bit, but a very similar kind of powder adhesive fused onto it so that you can then use these transfers at any time and heat press them onto garments. Better hand than the old school iron-on transfers, but still direct to film transfer printing is hot. It absolutely is hot right now. And it makes me think about some of the great things that, honestly, stuff that's in Brilliance, tools that we have in Brilliance for multimedia and prints, stuff that I've used before with sublimation. I think, what could I do if I combined direct-to-film transfer printing with embroidery? Multimedia is always happening out there. And like I said, lots of DTF prints, lots of multimedia discussions. And here's the one thing that was an interesting trend. Since you're saying any trends I'm seeing, Of the people who came to see my digitizing, even though it wasn't something I was directly talking about, when I showed blending, mass color blending, blended gradients, how to do line value shading and color shading on fills, that was really well attended to. Everybody asked how it was done, and they wanted to work on having lighter embroidery. That's the other thing that's really awesome. And what I mean by that is a lighter hand. Something that often sets my embroidery apart from the stuff that was around, at least especially when I first came out, the kind of stock design embroidery and other embroiderers that I was seeing working were doing much heavier densities than I was, and I kept backing my densities off. Certainly, people really like full coverage in the commercial world. They don't like to see much of what's going on in the background. They don't want to see color through it. I mean, most of us, we really don't, but they're very intolerant of having that kind of color showing through or any sort of show through happening. At this show, more people than usual were like, wow, your embroideries are really light, they're flexible. How do I get my embroidery lighter? And I'm like, that is awesome. That's something I've been kind of campaigning on for a long time. Backing down your densities when it makes sense, using structural underlay, and especially blending though. Yeah, blending and gradients. I know that I can always teach a class on that anytime anybody asks me for a class. That is one of the things that's there. How to go through the steps of patch making, I have taught multiple times and people still want to see repeatedly. So patch making is always coming up, certainly. Fine details, small text, those are always there. But the thing is, fewer people are asking me about small text. Fewer people were asking about small details. More people were asking about gradients. And I don't know, it might also be the influence of seeing more people trying to do multicolor embroidery. Maybe it's the influence of things like color reel, where people are doing either multimedia or they're seeing color reel style designs that have gradients in them. But people were very interested in gradients and shading and blending on fills, which was, like I said, surprising to some degree. People always want to talk about it, but the fact that it came with the discussion of, wow, your blended gradients are light. The density is light. And I do have some pieces where they really are quite flexible, despite the fact that I'm doing 3-color, 4-color gradient blends, because I tend to be very attentive to keeping my target density of any area only at one full density for the kind of a full coverage density for the type of thread that I'm using. And that's not like something I do that's amazing. Other people do it. I'm just saying that sometimes I can be quite quite focused, let's say. I won't say retentive today. I'll try to quit saying that. I can be really dialed in on trying to make my densities fairly light and flexible and having a nice hand to my garment. By the way, hi, Jesse. I'm happy to see you in. Thank you for tuning in and always giving those nice comments when you watch replays. Thank you very much, sir. Also, hi, Jarita. Happy to see you here too. With that, let's kind of move on to just a couple of things I noticed about the DAX show and about things that are going on here. I will say, though I said people were there of all skill levels, I really did see more people than I thought who are just starting, especially with digitizing. Even though I taught some intermediate class time, and I think that really, if I had taught a beginner and an intermediate version of the class, the beginner probably would have been a little more full or would have had more people in it, especially when we're talking about the longer workshop. I think people are into that. And I will say people ask for more of these office hours type events where people could ask questions one-on-one. I think that's something I'll probably have to look into down the road, doing a little bit more of this office hours style once in a while, where people are really encouraged to ask their questions and bring some sample materials to talk about these things. And certainly people wanted to have more depth. The cool thing was, even among those beginners, which is something we don't always see, among those beginners, they were asking for a more detailed, more essential, more elemental version of things the way I usually teach, which is to say, if you understand the basics of embroidery, if you can understand the basics of distortion, if you can understand how stitches work and how they react with fabric and stabilizer, you can control complex embroidery after knowing these simple pieces. If you know it at its base, at the atomic level, you'll be able to control it in a complex scenario. And people wanted to get deep on that. They wanted to know about the medium. They wanted to know about how distortion works. They wanted to know about compensation. They wanted to understand how stitches can be placed. They wanted to know about the interactions between stitch types. And that's very cheering to me because it's the way that I've taught for some time. And some days I've got folks who really would prefer the project style education, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's something I don't usually do, where it's like, hey, I'm going to walk you through step by step by step to make this one particular thing. There's absolutely a place for that. There's a place for tutorial style work. I think that it is very valuable, especially for folks who learn by watching someone else do the process and they can intuit everything they need. But it was cool to see people who value this concept of learning on maybe a more elemental level how to control things because they have something different they want that they haven't been able to find. And like I said earlier, having talked to more people that had specific types of embroidery they want to do that aren't represented even in the world of YouTubers and videos and tutorials, they had things they want that are out in the long tail, that are in a niche market, that are in a niche group, that aren't being covered by that kind of education. That nobody has said, here's how you make X type of embroidery because it's a little far afield and it's not exactly what everybody else is looking for. Because they have that kind of desire to make something very new or very original, they need to learn the basics of embroidery very well so that they can go and experiment and get out on that edge. And that was pretty cool. Like I said, I'm not saying that's the only thing. We all need to learn the basics of embroidery. We're all going to do things like digitizing logos. We're all going to make text, small text and large. We're all going to deal with colors and pull compensation and push compensation and sequencing and efficiency. These are all going to come for all of us. We have no choice but to deal with the realities of embroidery. However, it is cool to see that now people are saying, if I learn this thing at an elemental level, and know how to control those basics, then when I want to do something out of that realm, if I know how the individual stitch works, and I know how groupings of stitches work, and I know how those elements of stitches, when they interact, how that works and what I can do to control it, then when I need to do something completely new that isn't in a project, that isn't somewhere in a tutorial, I'll have a chance of being able to control it. So really very cool. And yeah, Lisa says, sounds like you had some awesome classes, exciting as a teacher. I don't know if my classes are awesome, but I sure had some awesome attendees and I sure appreciate them. By the way, as I am preparing, I know it sounds like I've still got events coming up. I've got the Tinley Park event, which is these same classes coming up shortly. Go ahead and put that banner up one more time. Tinley Park, Illinois. I will be teaching my long workshop, Build Up Your Digitizing. That is on April 13th. And then the short hour and 20-minute piece, Embroidery RX, Digitizer Review, which really is for embroiderers and digitizers. So people who are editing designs and who are just running designs, they want to know more about how they fall apart for things that are put wrong in the file, and for kind of basic digitizers. That's going on the next day. So that's 13th and 14th. Though I've got that going on, I have another event that I'll be announcing shortly where I'll be attending and not teaching courses. And I have the same classes I taught in January coming up in September for Fort Worth. Though those are all happening, I want to let you know that I'm already thinking about next year and other online events. So if there is something that you or someone you know desperately would love to see, someone like me who spent a lot of their time digitizing, working in software, working in embroidery, in the embroidery world, and in the decorated apparel business world, if there's something that someone like me can teach you that you think I know, I would like you to let me know. So if you have a class, your dream class, even the way your dream class runs, I can't promise you that I'm going to make that happen in any particular show or in any particular online forum. But if you want to put in your vote, as it were, by all means, please let me know the thing that bothers you the most. I would love to know your pain points, the things that you wish somebody would teach, the things you wish someone would walk you through, because that's going to help influence the way I style my classes in the upcoming year. So if there's something that you really want, whether you're here with the hashtag replay squad, as I always say, or if you are here live, I would like to hear from you. What is it you would like me to talk about, both here on the Takeup on any online webinar or event that I might do, or in person at these shows. I've also been tapped, and I'll talk about this more as it comes up and becomes something a little more firm, to help out with some shows and to discuss what they think we should be doing in the kind of new generation that's coming up in direct on-site education. And because I'm being asked questions about what people need, I know what I think you guys need, but I would love you to tell me what you wish was at the trade shows, because I will carry your message to the people that ask me and listen because of all the time I've spent teaching. If I have that access and I can provide a voice for you with the people that organize the shows, I would be happy to do it. So let me know, folks, if you have something you would really love to see but you haven't been seeing from trade shows or online education or in the spaces you look for education, by all means, let me know. One of the things I also talked about with folks today and yesterday that I think is interesting to discuss is the kind of official support and unofficial support that are around the different equipment that they use and software that they use. People discuss the kinds of content that they like to consume, the kinds of interactions that they hope to have both with brands and with people teaching. And it was really interesting to see the kinds of things that they wanted. As I mentioned previously, these office hours might be something that we do more of, because it seems like there really was kind of a hue and cry that there aren't enough folks doing interaction in office hours. And I think, that's something we might be able to work into the Takeups kind of schedule, at least into an occasional episode, if nothing else. And it was interesting to hear about how people took stock of the support they were being offered by their vendors, by their software vendors, by their equipment vendors and suppliers and servicers. And that's a thing that was really interesting to hear. It's not that I don't think it's important. In fact, whenever I talk to people about why they should buy one machine over another, or why they should look to one particular tool or another, often I discuss the fact that it is not only the official support, the documentation and the official video or other support channels that come from the brand, but it is also the unofficial support, the number of users and honestly the culture of the users of that tool or of that equipment that's going to make your experience of using that equipment feel one way or another, or be as useful as it can be. Certainly, part of that support, when we're talking about the equipment side of things directly, is can you get service? Can you get your machines fixed? Can you get things looked at? In the machine side, that's absolutely a thing. Being out here in the Midwest, there were some people who are in more rural areas than when I'm usually at the coastal shows. And in some of the more rural areas, they were talking about the difficulty of getting technicians out, the difficulty of dealing with really kind of the logistics of running a business. And it was interesting to hear, even in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is kind of like a landlocked island, we still have this chance to see people because there's kind of this pass through from Texas through Albuquerque into Arizona out to California. If you have people doing kind of service sweeps, there is a possibility for getting people out there. And when they come out, they tend to try and book things throughout Albuquerque to make sure they have enough to do when they're in our particular little landlocked island, right, where there isn't much else around us. However, there are some folks who really, they are having a heck of a time trying to get service, and it made a difference to them who was able to service them. And like I said, unofficial support as well as official support. And if not unofficial support outside of the official brand, more that the official brand also has different kinds of support. So documentation, yes, but also interaction or video or some other method of kind of getting into the tools at hand and getting into the work they needed to do and knowing how to do it correctly, and with the aid of the people who work on the tool, in the tool, day in and day out. So pretty interesting stuff. Like I said, I'd love to hear more about what you would love to see in trade shows or education, or what you need from, hey, me, or from anyone, because that's the thing. Being someone who now has taught for a while, not as long as, like I said, these elder statesmen like our friend Charlie Tobley, who's been teaching so long. I think he's been probably teaching more than a decade past my entire career. I'm sure he's probably been teaching through the entirety of my life almost. Charlie's been doing everything everywhere forever. I'm not him. However, what I will say is I've now taught enough in enough places with enough requirements and requests from people to come back that I'm being asked, hey, what is it that the people are looking for? And I would love to hear from you if you want me to pass your messages on to I would say the powers that be, but that's not how I see the show organizers. They really want to make the shows the best they can for you, because win-win scenario is that you want to come to the shows, you want to fill those seats for the classes, and that you are happy when you leave and have gotten everything you want out of it. That's win-win scenario. They want you to be there so that the vendors have a reason to be there, and so that you want to keep coming back. And part of that is getting the education right and getting the experience right. And I'm pretty glad to be able to kind of be a conduit for your voices as it comes to it. Also, that I was a shop floor guy. I mean, I started this whole adventure out being a digitizer in-house at a commercial shop, doing the work day in, day out. And that means even though I don't do that now, I work on very different projects these days, I still have that same feeling of, what do I need to get the job done? Even as I do, as I always have done, go into flights of fancy, talk about weird artistic stuff, show you guys slides of acanthus leaves and where I found one in a truck one day. I will still do that and go off script. However, I am still here for everybody who's doing something, not only commercially, but artistically. If you're a fiber artist, a crafter, or you're someone like me who is in the trenches making shirts for Joe's Plumbing, well, hey, I would like to make sure that you get what you need out of these experiences here in the real world or online. So with that, folks, I think I'm going to start winding it down. We got a couple more minutes till we hit 5 o'clock locally here in Minnesota time. And after that, I'm going to disappear for a minute before I come back in the producer role to help out with the evening show of the two regular guys. And then hopefully finally sit down for a little bit of dinner after 2 days of just really hitting it pretty hard at the show. I'm ready to have a very quick break before I'm up tomorrow at the show floor for one more day and back on a plane, if the blizzard doesn't catch me, and out to New Mexico. So the things that I want to reiterate one more time before we shut down for the day are these. Number one, if you have a chance to go to a regional show or a show in general, by all means, get out to a trade show. By the way, we will be coming back next week with a regular episode. I will come back. Even though I am back on the road the following week again, I will come back with a regular episode of the Takeup. Probably more digitizing focus this time around for sure. But in any case, if you have a chance to get out to a trade show, I do really recommend you get out there. Certainly, DAXshow.com. If you are in the Midwest, it is a fantastic regional show. Every year they have it in Kansas City, Missouri, Minnesota, up here, Welch, Minnesota. It's about an hour, 50 minutes outside of Minneapolis from the airport on Treasure Island Resort and Casino. So it's a fun place to be too if you need to have a little fun, if you're the kind of person where pulling a couple handles on the slot machine makes you happy, well, then there's a lot to be happy about out here. Suffice it to say, it's a nice little place to get away for a minute. And we have the loveliness of Tinley Park, Illinois. And I have to say, great thing about this is you're just outside of Chicago, so it's not like it's hard to get around. However, it's very easy to dip into Chicago and go see museums and the things that I like to do when I go see a world-class city. And in Chicago, I got to see some incredible museums a couple years back and really enjoyed seeing art and culture that was available out there in Chicago. And maybe you'll probably say, oh, okay, Eric, don't make so much of that. Remember that I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a smaller town. We don't always get to see all the same stuff. Even though it's a lovely mountain town, we're a little bit of a smaller place, folks. I might be easily entertained, but I love it out there in Illinois. And I'll be teaching on the 13th and 14th. Once again, final time to catch this year. Build up your digitizing design elements and execution, where I really go into kind of that intermediate level of how we build up our elemental understanding of embroidery and address the texture and the dimension that we can get, as well as how we control the basic distortion and compensation needed to get what we want to get. And Embroidery RX will be taught on that Friday, the 14th, all about diagnosing designs and understanding where they go wrong. Is it on the machine? Is it in the execution? Or is it in the file? And when it is, what can we do to fix it? All right, folks. So from Decorated Apparel Expo in Minnesota with my fake green screen behind me, this has been the Takeup, an impromptu version. If you have anything else you guys want to talk about, by all means, please let me know. Hit me up in the comments. If you have ideas for trade shows coming up that you would like to get to, once again, the powers that be, I'd like to be your voice for that to happen. And if you have ideas of what you want to see from me, either online or at the trade shows, now or in the future as I start developing next year's slate of classes, let me know. No question is stupid. Nothing that you've suffered through is something that I'll be making fun of you for. And honestly, I'll tell the people who do where they need to put it. We all go through our beginner process, and we should all keep that beginner mindset and remember that there's always something to learn. So tell me what you want to hear. Tell me the pain points you have, and I'll be coming back next week to see if I can help. All right, until next week, folks, I can't wait to do this again.